Hi, I'm Jess with Responsum for CKD, and today we have Gail Rae-Garwood with us to talk about her journey with CKD. Walk me through how it even came about, right? How did you even go to the doctor with being asymptomatic, right? And let's just stay there for a minute.
Okay. Being a New York City teacher, I chose a doctor when I came here, a PCP primary doctor, who was on my medical plan. And he was all the way over on the east side of the valley. I live all the way over on the west side of the valley. So it was a good 40 minutes to get to him, and that seemed ridiculous. So when I was old enough to go on Medicare, I looked for a Medicare doctor. The only requirement for me was it being near my home. And I found the doctor that I'm seeing now. Being a very thorough doctor, she decided that as a new patient, I should have all new tests, even though she had my records. So we went through the blood tests, the urine tests, all the tests that are pretty important for CKD. And she asked me to come back to talk about the results. So I did. And she said, your GFR is 39. And my reaction was, what? I didn't know what a GFR was, and I didn't know if 39 was good or bad. So then she explained a little teeny bit, and she said, could be kidney disease. I said, what is that? And how did I get it? And that became the title of my first book about CKD. So she got me an appointment with a nephrologist the next day. And you don't get an appointment with a specialist the next day. So I went to him and he explained what it was. And he explained what the 39 meant and what the GFR meant. And my head was going, huh? I really didn't understand what was going on. So then he finally said to me, I'll take care of you. You just show up for appointments. Red flag for me. Not what I wanted. I don't need a father. I've had. So one of the nurses saw that I was really annoyed and I didn't know what to do about it. So she took me out in the corridor and she said, there's another doctor here that you might enjoy better. I said, okay. So I went to the other doctor, the other nephrologist, and he was terrific, except at that time, 15 years ago, nobody was speaking patient speak. They were all speaking doctor speak. So I kept asking questions. And of course, it started to annoy him because he gave me all these pamphlets. And I really think he was a very good nephrologist. I think I was just too scared and overwhelmed to appreciate that. And I went to his dietitian, and she was wonderful. She told me in lay language, in words I can understand, she told me everything I asked her about to the best of her knowledge. But she was a dietitian, not a nephrologist. So that was my introduction to having chronic kidney disease.
Wow, that's interesting. You mentioned so many great points. I mean, patient advocacy is one. You were just asking questions naturally, like what's happening and this is not working for me. And so I think that's great. You hit on great points there. It's so great that you were able to see a nephrologist the day after your PCP visit, right? The type of urgency there is just so non-existent sometimes in our healthcare system. So it's great to hear that was your experience there. And it's great to shout out really thorough PCP, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had checkups before and you might have wondered, why hadn't anybody checked this before, right?
She is wonderful. She's still my PCP.
Good. Once you get one like that, you want to hold on to them for dear life. So great. So you mentioned the importance of diet and having a really great relationship with your nutritionist or your dietitian. Tell me how that was initially when she talked to you about the do's and don'ts of your diet.
I was so naive. Like, she would show me, she'd say, well, you can only have 5 ounces of protein because that's very hard on the kidney. And I would say, okay, what's protein and what does 5 ounces look like? She had measurements there. I mean, very basic measurements, like she'd show me a cup, and then she'd show me a hand representing how much a cup is. And then she'd explain to me, what is potassium? Where do you find it in your food? She was really thorough. I think she had a lot to do with the beginning of my education. I think she was the first person I wasn't angry with that I had CKD, that I was actually able to hear what she said. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact that she was speaking patient speak, not doctor speak.
You wrote in your responses that you became a CKD zealot when it comes to nutrition. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, I was a nut. Now you have to remember this was 15 years ago, so we didn't have the little apps. I mean, there were no apps on the phone. There weren't even apps in books. So I devised my own. I made a little chart and I would count the potassium and the phosphorus and the sodium and the protein. And then I would add it up for each meal or each snack. I mean, I delineated it in the first book, which, by the way, the dietitian had a chapter in. And I look at it now and I have to laugh because we have an app. You just put in the numbers and boom. You know if you're over, you know if you've had enough. It gives you not only definitions, but pictures, which are pretty important, of the measurement and of the electrolyte and the reasoning behind. Life is so much easier now with all these electronic devices.
Talked about being overwhelmed with your diagnosis when you were first diagnosed with diet and exercise. So we've talked a little bit about your nutrition and how much of a zealot you were and how organized you were with keeping track of your diet. But what about exercise? Was that new? How did that work for you? Was that something you had to grow into?
I had been a dancer most of my life, and it was wonderful exercise. But out here being in Arizona, wasn't like New York. There weren't dances every night. There weren't dances every weekend.
What's your take on that? Staying hydrated and getting the appropriate amount of sleep?
Well, as far as hydration, it doesn't have to always be water. I think it's better to be water because juices have sugar in them. Oh, I forgot to mention I'm a diabetic too, so can't have juice. And, alcohol is also not really recommended. So water is the universal, but you got to be careful because as much as you drink, you could actually overhydrate. What do they call them? Gym rats? And they walk around with water. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm holding up like 128 ounces. That may be too much. But especially in Arizona, it's very, very important that you keep hydrated. Even in New York with the humidity, hydrate. The more water you drink without going over a certain limit, the better for your kidneys. It sort of eases the work that the kidneys have to do. And as far as sleep is magic. Sleep is the best medicine. While you're sleeping, your body, your brain is trying to heal itself. And it may not succeed 100%, but maybe it stops the CKD from getting worse. Or maybe it does get a little better. The last 2 or 3 years dealing with the unique makeup of each person. Funny, I don't remember it, but what it means is each patient is different and you have to deal with the patient in front of you, not the patient who was here before or your everyday idyllic patient.
Absolutely. With anxiety and behavioral health issues too, depression and having to go through those types of health challenges, which is understandable.
Absolutely. When they told me I had chronic kidney disease, I thought I was going to die. I mean, we all die, but I thought I was going to die like the next day. And I was already in my head making provisions for my 18-year-old here in Arizona and my 21-year-old in New York. And it was unnecessary. It would be very nice if when you're diagnosed with this, you were told this is not an immediate threat. You can deal with it. I also don't like the idea that PCPs are telling patients when they get to stage 3. CKD has 5 stages, going from 1, which is not too bad at all, to 5, which is dialysis. I feel if I had been told at stage 1 or 2, I could have started changing what I needed to in my life. So maybe I would never get to stage 3.
Integrative process, and it involves a lot of people, including your nephrologist, your dietitian, maybe your behavioral health specialist, helping you deal with or manage what's being thrown at you. What was your therapy, or how did you go from I'm gonna die, right, the next day, which is dramatic, but I mean, who knows, right? That's a pretty heavy thing to deal with, to this is not as bad as I thought, as watch, my food and my diet. Walk me through those 2 extremes and how you got there, how you got where you are now?
Well, as I mentioned, I didn't really understand what the nephrologist was saying. And while the dietitian was a great help, she could only go so far. But I was teaching research writing at the college. So I started researching for myself. And that's where I learned what I learned. And that's also when I started feeling like my basic tenet in life is we're here to help others. I mean, why are we here if not to help others? So after I researched myself and I understood what was happening to me and how I could deal with it and what I could do to slow it down, maybe even raise the GFR, I felt like this is really selfish. I should share this. Just keep telling people I'm not a doctor, but this is what I discovered. And that's how the book started. And actually, it's kind of how the blog started too, because there was a doctor in Chennai, India, who had very, very poor patients, and they couldn't sometimes make it to the clinic for dialysis. So he wanted to get this information to his patients, but they certainly couldn't afford the book. Well, my New York daughter, who was very social savvy, explained to me what a blog was and how. So I told the doctor, tell you what, I'll make a blog. They were Rexograph. I said, you Rexograph copies and leave it in your office and they could take it back to their villages. He loved that idea. So each chapter of the book became a blog. And then when I finished with the book, I found that, I wasn't done sharing. There was more. I knew there was more. And that's how the blog has stayed alive for 15 years. What is it and how did I get it? Early stage chronic kidney disease. And there are parts of it that are outdated, like the cards I made to keep track of my electrolytes. You could do it on the phone now. And the other books are Slow It Down CKD, and it's a series, starts with 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, of course, is not written yet. And what they are is written copies of the blogs for that year. And sometimes I have guest writers. I'll go to things that are weird that you don't think have to do with CKD. Like right now I have spinal stenosis. That's related to CKD. I mean, it's warped, the relationship. You have to go up and around and through the whole CKD process, but it's related. So things like that. And all the books are on Amazon, and I think they're on Barnes and Noble too, B&N.
Thank you so much for your time in this interview with Responsum for CKD. We're so appreciative of your time.